Hi, it's Jeff Harrison here. Somebody in the CorelDRAW.com forums was interested in rebuilding something like this as a vector shape, or something there where you could have a higher resolution version of it than the one they had found on the internet. So the first step I would do is bring the graphic into CorelDRAW by importing it or pasting it into an empty CorelDRAW page. And then when I'm rebuilding stuff, I tend to select it and then apply some uniform transparency to it, usually at about 80 or so. And then to prevent it from being moved around by accident, I'll right click on it until I see the pop-up option to lock the object like that. The reason is that it allows you to work around the shape without accidentally moving it. So I'm going to select a circle tool, just drag out a perfect circle, pressing Control, and I press the P key to center it to the page like that. You can see it's pretty close there. Alright, so the next step is how do we get the swirls going on? Well, if we go into Pi mode and then go over here and type 360 divide by 8, we'll get a piece like that. Now the reason I chose 8 was that I can see that there's 8 different individual pieces in here for the swirl. So the next step is to, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and I'm going to press Alt-Z. That'll enable my snapping to be on. It was off by default when I set up my workspace. And what that does is if I click on the shape again, we can see that there's a center point there. And what that is a point of rotation. You can see how when I move it towards the edge of the shape, that little edge text appears. But if I move it to the very tip, it'll be right at the very tip of that piece there now. Alright, so I'm going to grab this and back away by pressing the F3 key. And if I grab one of the rotation handles and hold down Control, you see how it wants to snap to that edge. I'm going to press the right mouse button and that'll duplicate a piece that was moved relative to the original. Press Control R about 6 more times and that completes the pie. So now we have the 8 pieces that we need. If I select all of those, press Control G, now they're grouped. Now to get the swirl effect, we're going to have to apply some distortion, but before I do that, I'm going to rotate all of those pieces as a group until they're about lined up a little bit like that. You can see where the edge of the, one of the swirls might be. I'm looking at the edge of the swirl versus the corners of one of those pie pieces. I'm going to press Alt-Z to toggle off my snapping again, so I don't see those little snapping points pop up all of the time. And then I'm going to go to a menu choice here. See if I have it in my workspace. Here it is. We're looking for Distort specifically. And if I grab the Twist Distortion mode, I can click on the shape, and you can see how it's wanting to give me a bit of swirl there like that. So it's that easy. You can notice that I have some gaps going on there. If we were to choose the Center Distortion button here, it fixes those problems, which is a good thing. So while this example may not be perfect, I suppose we could reduce our rotation a little bit. Let's say 342. Actually, we have to go the other way. How about 350? You know what I mean. It's pretty close for our needs. We could try a little more distortion, I suppose, if we selected our distortion tool. And just by using our mouse up here, we can see what's going on. If we wanted to refine it a little bit more, I would say that's pretty reasonable there. Alright, so once that's done, you can ungroup all those pieces, and they're all now individual things that you can color however you like. So shift selecting some other ones, pressing Control R to fill them, and now we have the basic idea for getting the swirls dealt with. We'll want to apply some white to the remaining ones here as well, like that. Alright, so I think before I go any further, I think the original art was more of a orange color, so I'm just going to go to an orange there instead of a red. Shift select the rest. Or I'll show you another technique I often use. Sometimes I'll hold down the Shift key and right click on a shape and drag and drop it on another. Just like that. That's another way to copy colors from one shape to another very quickly. Alright, so I'm going to move this over to the side. We've got that other circle there behind the scenes. I suppose we could make one of those in a moment. Well, let's go ahead. What I'm going to do here is, because we're going to need a one complete circle here, I'm going to copy everything to the clipboard. I'm going to weld all of them together and see what happens here. You see how it's welded them all into a blob, but it's left these interior lines there. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. And you're probably wondering, how are we going to select those interior pieces easily? One technique that many people don't know about is if you hold down the Alt key, you can actually draw a circle. I'm not sure if there's a term for it, circle selecting, or kind of a free-form selection tool to access nodes. So what I did there is I just selected all those interior nodes, got rid of them. So you're probably wondering why I'm doing this. It's because we need to have a shape to power clip our shadows into later here in a moment. I'm going to scale up another little circle, select everything, give it an outline and no fill. And then our actual swirlies are on the clipboard. I'm going to paste them back into place and get rid of the outlines on those because we don't need those. I'm going to flip these out of the way just by grabbing the left selection edge, moving it to the right, and I can press Control R again just to move them a little more out of the way. I can group them. And the reason I flipped them like that is that I can flip them back into place very easily later on once I need them. So let's go have a look at what we're dealing with here. This one, outer circle, is actually on top of the next one in. So I'm going to hit Control Page down, and now I can easily access this one. Unlock our original shape, flip it in the other direction, get rid of the transparency on that one to none, just to see what we're dealing with. I'll flip this one in place by holding down Shift and Control, moving it over. So now we have the original one there, and we're going to have a look at how can we apply maybe a shadow that's kind of in this range right there. If we look at the original artwork, we have kind of a darker area all the way around to suggest some depth, and then there's also a highlight at the top left there, that little white kind of faded area. What I'm going to do is make a copy of that inner circle by pressing the plus key on the numeric keypad. I'm going to cut that to the clipboard by pressing Control X, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle, a square, something like that. Press P, paste in that one circle I had duplicated, combine it with this square, pressing Control L. And what that did is it made a shape for me that looks like this. Okay, and what I'll be doing with that is putting a drop shadow on that by going to our effects tools here. Go to drop shadow, drag it out from the middle, and so it's made a little drop shadow there. I'm wondering if that's going to be enough. Let's check out outside. That's maybe too much, but let's drop this back a little bit. How about 8? Let's say I'm happy with that. So I'm going to save our work here. Just press Control S to do that, by the way. And there's different ways we could do this. If we need to adjust the shadow, we can certainly power clip this shape plus the shadow into it. I'm just going to hit Shift Page down, and I'm going to go to Effects, Power Clip, Place Inside Frame. I'm going to click in this space, and you can see how we have our shadow inside there. If we ever need to edit that, we can Control click on it, and it'll take us behind the scenes into the power clip editing mode. To get out of that mode, I Control click over here, out of the way. So that's how to get into power clip mode. So now I want to move this swirly part back into position, and if I flip it back this way, hit Control R to flip it back again, it's now perfectly in the position it was in before. I could Shift Page down, move it behind everything. That should be fine. And we've got our outer circle there, so I think the only thing really left to do, I can see there's a little drop shadow on the original one down there. I'm not going to worry about that. But I will try to recreate our little highlight there. Just make a regular circle like that, bring it up a little bit, drag a copy over this way, something like that. Then I'm going to trim into this circle here using the second one that I made, like that. Get rid of this one, and then now we have a kind of a crescent that we're left with, like this. Obviously that's too harsh, and what we can do with that is simply convert that to a bitmap. We'll call it RGB, anti-aliasing, transparent. Doesn't have to be super high resolution. due to the nature of it. So I'm just going to go with 150 dots per inch on that for the moment. So what we're going to do is blur this. So we're going to go to bitmaps. Go to, because it's a bitmap now, we have access to some bitmap effects such as blurring. Go to blur, Gaussian blur. Move this out of the way a little bit. And you can see that it's blurring behind the scenes there like that. So we're kind of getting on the right track. Now, if that's still too harsh in the center point of the white area, you could always apply a transparency to that like this. Make it uniform. And then we have the ability to have some control over the highlight of how we want it to look. And we could choose different merge modes like add, perhaps. See how that looks. It might look a little more natural. But it just depends what you want to do. Or in X6, there's a new one called screen mode. It's a new option there. Let's try that one. I don't mind the way that looks, to be honest. Go back to normal mode. That doesn't look too bad either. So anyway, you can compare the difference with that. So anyway, that's how you make a nice simulation of a vector shape that may have originally been a bitmap. That's might be too rough for printing purposes. Right? Hope you enjoyed.